With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
It's Irish. It is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No, we Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
From the King Spring Studios here in Smyrna, Georgia, this is A Bunch of Malarkey. I'm your host, Charlie McMahon. Thank you so much for joining us on this mid-February edition of the show. Valentine's Day approaching, football over. We have a special guest here today. Corey is back in the studio. Welcome, Corey.
Hello, Charlie. Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't been with Corey since, I guess it was right before Thanksgiving when we were the two turkeys in traffic.
That's it. Right before Black Friday.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, St. Patrick's Day, I'm way ahead of myself. Valentine's coming up this week. Are you guys big Valentine's Day celebrators, or are you past that stage now?
Those days are over. No, I won't say we're past that stage. It's definitely changed. With kids, it's more, our daughter, she understands. She's very excited. We're actually going to be addressing Valentine's for her class later today.
Oh, okay.
Getting all that ready. And then
they don't have like little box cards anymore where you just pull them out and write to Joey, love, whoever? Yeah,
but then, these days, Charlie, you're the lame parent. If it's not, if it's just the boxed and you write the to and the from.
So you're handcrafting these?
No, we're not handcrafting.
I was going to say.
We're just going to, we're going to
Joey Hallmark over here.
Take pre-made number 1 and combine it with pre-made number 2 and then look pseudo-crafty.
Yeah, no, it's all about the box. When you were a kid, am I that much older than you?
No.
Wasn't it just the box?
It was the box, and it was the perforated Transformer Valentine.
Yeah, it was like the Smurfs and all that.
Out,
yeah,
some Be Mine hearts.
Yeah, exactly. They don't even have those candies this year. I heard that company. What was the name of that company that went out of business? That had the little conversation hearts.
Yeah, they're done.
They're done, but I think they're coming back next year. But they're out of business as of right now, so there's no conversation hearts this year.
Ooh.
So I hope you didn't have your heart set up.
Zing.
So football's over, Corey. So are you like one of those people that are you a big sports fan where you're looking for sports now?
I am a big sports fan. I stay pretty busy with it. This past football season, I'm kind of in that stage in life where with the little kids, really, and I'm sure most of the listeners, can empathize with this, where I record the game. Falcons game.
Right.
I'm not watching.
You're not watching
Chargers Colts 4 o'clock on CBS. I really don't care. But I'll record the game. And then, sometime later that day, go back and watch it. But no, I'm okay. I'm counting down. I'm a big golf fan.
Okay, so the tour and everything.
The tour and following that and seeing the lead up to the Masters.
Okay.
It's countdown for the Masters for me.
You say you're not a baseball fan. You don't care about the Braves or anything locally?
I like them, but if they win 60 games and lose 100, I don't care.
Well, I've got my New York Islanders hockey flag flying proudly outside the King Spring studio because they are in first place for the first time, and I can't even tell you how long, folks. So I mildly follow hockey. Basketball, I don't care about. I'm really, as you know, big baseball fan, counting down to opening day, Yankees and spring training and all that. So, but for now, it's going to be very. And again, I'm not a guy like you that sits on a September Sunday and watches football. I'll either mildly watch or I'll wait for the playoffs. Like right after Thanksgiving, that gets into my wheelhouse where I like to watch football on Sunday.
Yeah, and I've got some friends that they live and die by NCAA basketball.
March
and
Madness.
They are arguing about
brackets
the games in November and December. So I do not watch any college basketball until the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I'm not a college basketball fan at all. I used to have season tickets to St. John's Red Storm years ago because a friend of mine, who I have tribute to up on the top shelf, was a big St. John's alumni. My wife's a St. John's alumni, and I was a big fan of St. John's basketball. This is going back to the late 90s, though. But they're pretty good, though. They're pretty good this year, but they hadn't been good for a while. So
and they had a game on TV
yesterday.
Coach, older guy, bald head.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't follow them anymore. Yeah. So we have a lot to cover, so let's segue right into our favorite topic, folks, and you know what that is.
Mutant of the Week.
And we had a pretty decisive victory. Now, Corey, you said off the air that you've been on the losing end the last few weeks. You voted for the person that didn't win.
Yeah, that's correct. Now, I think I may be too analytical in terms of would that person really piss me off or not?
So, last week it was a pretty decisive win. The Filthy Flying Family, the family that got on a plane in Florida headed for Michigan, won with a 62% margin over the Steak Smuggler, the gentleman. Oh, I shouldn't call him a gentleman. The mutant who smuggled steak out of the restaurant after gulping down a beer and eating a lobster tail. He had 38%. So pretty decisive for the Flying Family. I think I voted for them, not because they smelled, because I guess anybody could smell if maybe they rushed out of the hotel and didn't have a chance to shower. But the fact that he turned it into this whole religious thing, just say, all right, I stink today and move on with your life.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he won it. I don't think it was so much for the stink.
Well, and see, I voted for this. I'm a big steak guy, number one. Okay, so if you're gonna walk out of a restaurant on your tab, sit there, enjoy the steak. Eat it, tell the waitress, hey, I got to go to the restroom or, something, I'll be back. And then just leave. Right. I don't condone it, but I'm not going to take I don't know where he was.
It was a porterhouse.
Yeah, I'm not going to take a $45 steak and wrap it in a napkin and shove it in my pocket.
Right.
Then I've got, steak juice on my jacket.
But he probably made a nice sliced steak sandwich later on.
If you are going to commit a crime, there's ways to do it. Do it the right way.
Right. Well, that brings us to our two nominees this week. I think we are evenly matched. Corey's going to read our first nominee.
All right, here we go. Nominee number 1. While there are lawyers who have come to the defense of bedbug infestation victims, it's not every day that a lawyer becomes the source of a parasitic infestation. On Monday, the Rogers County Courthouse in Oklahoma. Well, we're getting
widening the horizons.
Wow, watch out. On Monday, the Rogers County Courthouse in Oklahoma was evacuated after an attorney arrived with an abundance of bedbugs crawling on him. The unidentified lawyer was covered in so many of the parasites that they fell from his clothing as he walked around a third-floor courtroom. You're going to need to add on to your book here. Right.
Exactly.
A woman in the courtroom noticed them and said she could visibly see something crawling on his neck, which was later found to be bedbugs, said Scott Walton of the Rogers County Sheriff's Office. He also placed his jacket over some file folders, and when his jacket moved, bedbugs were discovered there.
Oh, my God.
The sheriff added. Horrifyingly enough, Walton said it's unlikely the lawyer was unaware of the bugs, whose bites leave painful rashes everywhere on the body. So that one, let's address that one as the creepy crawly counselor.
The creepy crawly counselor is our nominee number 1. Now, you mentioned my book. Now, if it wasn't that I worked near the courthouses, I would have found this story surprising. But I saw some real shady, disheveled lawyers coming in and out of the local courthouse. So somehow that doesn't surprise me too much. How could you not feel the bugs on you?
Feel it on you.
All right, so
and it makes you wonder too. Is this guy just some public defender, or is he prominent in the community? He's got billboards all over the place.
Yeah, one call.
Yeah, one call, scratch off.
Yeah, that's right. So our mutant nominee number 2 comes out of North Carolina. A North Carolina college student had seen items of her clothing go missing, and now she knows why. The student at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro made a startling discovery on Saturday in her apartment near campus after she and her roommates initially feared a ghost was haunting them. It sounded like a raccoon in my closet, Maddie told Fox 8 out of Raleigh. I'm like, who's there? And somebody answers, hey, my name is Drew. I open the door, and he is in there wearing all my clothes, my socks, my shoes, and he has a book bag full of my clothes. Maddie called her boyfriend and tried to keep Drew occupied. He tried on my hat, she told Fox 8. He went in my bathroom and looked in the mirror and then was like, you're really pretty. Can I give you a hug? But he never touched me. Maddie told WFMY that Drew was telling me everything about his life and basically how he got into my closet. The intruder left when Maddie's boyfriend arrived, but he was later arrested. Andrew Swafford, 30 years old, is facing a total of 25 charges, including breaking and entering, according to the state of North Carolina. He is being held at the Guilford County Jail. Maddie told the station there had been previous incidents in December when they found two strangers in their living room. She is planning on moving out and has signed a lease for a different apartment. Every time I go in my room now, there's a bad vibe. I'm just ready to leave. So I guess we'll call him the closeted creep?
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine thinking it's like a ghost and some guy in your clothes?
And I may have missed it. Does it say what time of day she found him?
I think it said night.
Was he under the influence?
It said night when they came home Saturday night.
But he didn't even try to hide. He's like, "What's up? I'm Drew."
Yeah, exactly.
You got this in a size 2?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so you can't make this stuff up, folks. They're everywhere. They are everywhere. So before we get into our main subject, I'm going to read a small story that kind of segues into our main topic. Do you remember Lenny Dykstra, the baseball player?
I do. I hated him. Big Braves fan back in the early
So you
90s.
hated him on the Mets and Phillies?
Nails? Yeah, hated him.
Well, Lenny Dykstra continues to be in the news for all the wrong reasons.
I've heard some recent, yeah.
The Mets' 1986 World Series champion has apparently been causing issues for his neighborhood near his residence in Linden, New Jersey. Basically, he's been running an illegal rooming house on his property. Councilwoman Gretchen Hickey has been fielding those complaints, leading to the charge to remove Dykstra from his neighborhood. People are constantly coming in and out. His neighbors have no quality of life whatsoever. They live in fear. I think certain departments in this city have dropped the ball. Dykstra's neighbors have complained about piles of garbage, fights, random people moving in and out of the house, construction noises in the middle of the night. Police have been called to the property multiple times, and Dykstra has faced previous fines for housing illegal occupants. The 55-year-old spent 12 seasons in Major League Baseball, played for half of those seasons for the Mets and the rest for the Phillies. He's had trouble with the law in recent years. He had altercation with an Uber driver. He was charged with making terroristic threats and 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance after he was found with cocaine and methamphetamine. Those cases have not been concluded. So basically, that segues into our main subject, which is neighbors. Now, we all watch Mr. Rogers. Now, Corey's taking off his...
I'm changing my shoes right now.
Yeah, he's changing his shoes. Now, I feel like Mr. Rogers did us a disservice. It was a great educational show, but he didn't prepare us for the shit we were going to have to deal with in the neighborhood, right?
Yep.
Everybody, it was like a utopia, kind of, in a way. The mailman... I mean, listen to that music, folks. Soothing. You go outside, the mailman, everybody's friendly. But that's not reality, is it, Corey?
It's not.
I mean, our neighborhood's not so bad, but it isn't what he painted it out to be. A beautiful day in this neighborhood.
Would you be mine? Would you be mine? That was impromptu, too, folks.
So you get the idea, folks. Mr. Rogers, I mean, he meant well. He did. He meant well, but he didn't prepare us for the...
But he didn't tell you about the lovely mailman. Hello, John.
Exactly.
And then the bitch Carla next door.
But there was one show that did prepare us for what we were going to face in life. Who are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood? In your neighborhood? Who are the people in your neighborhood? Come on, sing it, everybody.
People that you meet each day.
All right, so I think Sesame Street prepared us for a different reason. Because there were some crazy characters on Sesame Street. You had Big Bird, who was like the washwoman of the whole neighborhood, the yenta that went around and got in everybody's business, right? He was always up in everybody's shit. You had Bert and Ernie, who were a homosexual couple.
You had Oscar, the bum in a trash can.
Yeah, Oscar, the negative piece of shit that got on everybody's nerve. Then you had Cookie Monster, who was the addict in the neighborhood.
The addict.
Grover, who was the ADD kid.
True.
You had Snuffleupagus, who was like the stoner.
True.
So basically, you got all these Kermit and Miss Piggy interracial marriage,
Yeah,
interspecies.
Yes.
So it kind of prepared you for all the different types of people and different personalities better than Mr. Rogers, wouldn't you say?
I never thought of those Sesame Street characters that way until you just said it, and I'm like, holy crap, he's right.
I overanalyze everything. That's what this show's all about, folks. So we're going to talk about we're going to get to our current neighborhood. Corey and I happen to live in the same, we'll call it subdivision. There's 250 houses, 225, I don't remember, somewhere in that range in our neighborhood. We'll get to those stories later, but we're going to talk first about, before we moved into this neighborhood, some crazy neighbors or neighborhood conflicts or just insane people that we've lived near over the years. So we'll let Corey start off telling a story. You can mention the city if you want to, or you don't have to.
Yeah, well, mine, I've got I'll save one for a little bit later. So this first story comes also from Smyrna, Georgia. Prior to living in the subdivision that Charlie and I both live in now, we lived not too far away. And there was a house, good, quiet neighborhood, mix of older families, mix of different races, mix of starter families, younger couples. So I go out one day, and the older lady directly across the street, she's walking her dog, I'm checking the mail, and she kind of motions me over. And I walk over, and she says, have the U.S. Marshals called you? And I'm like, no, the U.S. Marshals have not called me.
Okay.
Why? And she says, they're watching that house next door to you. And I'm like, time out, all right? You mean to tell me there's a stakeout going on to the house directly next to me? She lives across the street from me. So she runs inside, and she comes back out, and she has a U.S. Marshals business card.
So
and
the guy
she
paid her a visit.
Yeah, and she says, call this guy, because he wants to talk to you. He's been trying to get a hold of you. And I'm like, oh, crap, right? So I jot down the guy's number. I call him.
Right.
And the guy answers the phone. He says he's an agent or a marshal. And I tell him, I was told by a neighbor to call you.
Right.
I live, and I give him my address. And he says, hold on. And he stops whatever he's doing. And he says, do you live in the house with a magnolia tree in front and you drive a blue 4Runner?
He knows everything about
you. And I was like, yeah. Does your wife drive a Nissan Juke? Yes. Mm-hmm. He goes, okay, we need to talk. I'm going to text you. Is this your cell phone number? I'm going to text you some pictures. I said, what is going on?
Right.
He said, there is a man from Milwaukee wanted for double homicide, and his best friend lives next door to you. And we have tracked his debit card receipts or transactions and all this stuff, and we know he is hanging out with your neighbor.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, crap.
Nothing like a double homicide.
Yeah. It's like, and the bad thing, too, is like I think the trash day was the next day, and I have to go out and and my trash can's next to their house. I'm like, shit.
Wearing your Kevlar vest.
Yeah, so 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my home office working, and all of a sudden, SUVs, squad cars, everything come plowing down the street through my yard, guys popping out with rifles. They found the guy and they haul him out of there. So it was a federal raid next door to my house. So that was kind of a...
Well, that's what it is, Corey. It's like you can move into the neighborhood. It seems like, when you're house hunting, everything looks great, but you don't know who's living in the houses next door. Or when you're already established and someone in the neighborhood puts their house up for sale, you don't know who's coming in there.
You can't control it. Yeah.
No, it's something like you can't control your family and you can't control your neighbors. Your family's who it is. If they're sons of bitches, they're sons of bitches.
The only person that can control who your neighbors are is Equifax, Experian, and
we're going to get it.
Scores.
I agree to an extent, but we're going to get into that later. How you have some control over who moves in next door, and we'll go over that later because there is a house for sale that borders here, and I'll tell you how. Possibly if I don't like the looks of somebody, I could keep them from buying
You're controlling.
So you can't control. Now, here's a situation we ran into in New York. My wife and I met in 2007. We bought a house in 2008 and got engaged that same year and got married the following year in 2009. So the first year in our house in New York, the first house we owned together in New York in 2008, first year was great. We made friends with all of the neighbors. everybody got together. There was I think 6 couples. There was 12 of us that always got together at a different person's house. We had block parties. Everything was great. But there was this one strange guy that lived across the street. He was about 40 years old. He lived with his mother, just him and his mother. He was always, it didn't work. He was always outside in the yard, mowing the lawn, washing his car all day. And 2 of those neighbors that we hung out with were police officers, and they warned my wife and I that this guy had a criminal record for some real crazy shit that he did. But I gave the guy the benefit of the doubt. I would say I waved to him, and I didn't want any trouble.
Stay on the good side.
But after about a year, every time my wife would step out the house, we would hear him yell sexual things out the front door. He would yell certain things at me. So I let it go for about a week, and one day I was out staining my fence. And I have a shaved head. I'm bald. I don't give a shit. I went out with dignity. I didn't try plugs or Rogaine. So I'm out in the sun, and I hear him yell, "Wax off, wax on, wax off, you bald motherfucker." So I just stood up and I said, "Excuse me," very politely. I said, "If you have something to say, why don't you just come over here and say it?" He come running over with a hammer and tried to assault me with a hammer. Well, craziness ensued. My wife started screaming. I start ducking hammer swings from this guy. All the neighbors come out and break it up. Police come, file a report. They say to me, "Do you want him arrested?" And like a fool, I should have said yes, but I just said, "You know what? I got to live near this guy. Let it go. Maybe this guy's just on something today. Let it go." Well, this harassment continued for the duration of the time we were in New York. I had to put cameras on my house. Every time I stepped out of my house, he must be nothing to do all day. He was watching out the window. As soon as I would step out of my house, he would come out and mumble stuff and try to get me to, into an office. Yeah. And cut our tires a couple of times at the train station. Knew where my wife parked at the train station. Cut the tires.
That's scary.
So it got to a point where we just up and left, and that's in a way it was a blessing because we were going to buy another house in New York. And then I said to my wife, "Why are we going to stay in New York? Let's move. Let's try someplace else." And so indirectly, this guy's responsible for us leaving there and coming here. Because if everything would have been copacetic in that neighborhood, we probably would have still been there.
And who knows if you would have had the podcast?
Right,
so
and I wouldn't know you and all the people.
This guy.
So you never know, folks. You can have the best intentions. You could try to be nice to people, and it's one of those things, Corey, where if you do have an asshole in your neighborhood, you kind of have to walk on eggshells because once you break the ice and have an incident with somebody, you got to deal with that person all the time. Then.
You do. Yeah.
So you have to kind of find a balance to deal with stuff, right?
You do. Have you ever had a situation where maybe you overheard or witnessed not a domestic dispute to the point where this is blatant, I've got to call the cops right now, but something that is skirting the fence of, do I mind my own business here or do I say something?
Just in that apartment building I spoke about where I threw the fruit out the window all the time, I heard a couple that lived below us fighting a lot, smashing things, but I never really got involved. But you've had incidents where
prior to getting married, I had a loft in downtown Atlanta, and there was the girl that lived directly next door to me. I guess by the apartment layout, maybe her kitchen was on the other side of the wall from my bedroom.
Okay.
And so everything was polished concrete floors, and you could hear her high heels walking around, very distinct, click, 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 all over the place. You could hear her dog's nails.
Right.
Thinking back, it was poor construction. But she would always get in the fight with her boyfriend, and they would just be going at it. And I never heard him raise his voice distinctively, or I never heard any physicality. But you got to think about that stuff sometimes. And when I was in college, there was a family that lived directly next door to the house that me and my roommates rented, and this family was just, I hate to say trash, but they were trashy.
Okay.
And
trash is allowed on the
trash.
show.
Okay. They were trash. And so anyway, they had a teenage son and a teenage daughter, and then I think they somehow had custody of, or maybe the teenage daughter had a kid, but there was a 2-year-old little girl there.
Oh, boy.
And this house was situated about 75 yards from the Ohio River.
Oh, man.
And so I would go on jogs up and down the river path, and I'm down there one day, and this 2-year-old little girl is by herself
by the river,
playing on the banks of the Ohio River.
Oh my God!
And I'm like, crap! And so I have to take her back. They had no idea she was gone. The mother would go lock herself in her minivan and scream "Save me! Kill me!" So anyway, we never really did anything about that because we were college kids. The last night or 2 nights before we graduated college, we had a raging party. And that house called the cops on us.
The nerve, right?
For causing a ruckus.
That's balls.
Yeah.
That's bowling balls. See, there's a way, like I said, to control, like if you have neighbors and they annoy you, there's ways to get even with them passive-aggressively where they don't know it's you. And when I lived in that New York City apartment, there would be families of kids playing in the street all day. Now, that's normal in the city, but they would scream all day long. Like on a Saturday morning, you're trying to just get your thoughts together after a work week, and kids screaming in the streets all the time. So at night, on a school night, when they would go to bed, they would go to bed at night, and I would say around 9, 10 o'clock when I knew everybody was asleep, this is what I would play out the windows where the kids thought it was either an ice cream truck or a carnival in town, which would make all the lights go on in all the apartment buildings, and the kids run out to the street to see what was going on. This is the exact sound I played out the windows.
At 10 o'clock at night, and all these kids are like, Mommy, give me $1.
And on summer nights especially, they would come out thinking that the ice cream man or a carnival was taking place, and it would just be a mass exodus of kids out of these buildings. But it would echo off the buildings where they thought it was on the next block, so they would go running. They would start chasing the sound, and I would just sit up there laughing my ass off to that sound. I also had a guy who had, believe it or not, pigeon coops. This was the house I lived in growing up as a child. Right by our back fence, he had coops of pigeons. Now, we liked this guy. He would help. He was a mechanic. He would help my mom out when we had car trouble. Nice guy. But he would come out and let these pigeons fly around the neighborhood. And he had this giant flag. You ever see those big, tall flags on the back of a bicycle with the orange flag on top that bends?
So they knew where to come back to? Or?
Yeah, they would circle around the neighborhood like 30 times to get exercise, and he would wave this giant, big, must have been 10, 20 feet tall, this flag. And he would wave this flag after they shut up your whole property, in your pool, on your car, and they would fly back into the coop after he waved this flag. And there was a petition going around the neighborhood. One of the neighbors got pissed off with all the shit all over and tried to have this guy's pigeons removed, but I think my parents wouldn't sign it because they liked the guy.
So this guy's out there releasing number one, and I know it was New York. It's not Mike Tyson.
It was the suburbs like this. Yeah.
So it wasn't Mike Tyson.
No, it wasn't Mike Tyson.
And then this guy's out there waving a flag like he's taking Iwo Jima.
It was a tall flag. It was a very bendable. Like the best analogy I can make is back in the 70s and 80s. Those kids had those really tall flags on the back of the bike with the orange flag. This was like I would say 10 to 15 feet tall. This flag with a giant orange
bend
flag
in it, some fiberglass.
Real bend to this thing. And he would go out there and do this whole waving, like almost like he was like a what do they call like a ninja with this thing and do
it's like
this.
The guys you said, like opening ceremonies for the Olympics. These guys are out there waving stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was quite but the pigeons as a kid, we used to hear them making that little, those pigeon noises.
So whatever happened with the petitions?
I think the gentleman ended up passing away because he was an older guy, and then I think his wife just got rid of the pigeons.
I know it's New York and it's different, but nobody thought to get out there with a 12 gauge and just...
Well, there were hundreds of them.
Well, all I'm saying
Corey's
is...
like 6 shots. I would have taken them all out.
All I'm saying is try that shit down here, buddy. Down here in the South, try that.
Did you... you know what else is prevalent in the suburbs of New York? Because housing is so expensive in New York. Like, mortgages are... You don't even want to know in property tax. So a lot of people finish their basement or they partition off parts of their house and they rent illegally because you have to have all kinds of zoning, but people just rent. I've lived in a couple of illegal suburban apartments. My first 2 places I lived when I moved out of my own were apartments that weren't legal. But you had to deal with certain neighbors that would take advantage of that situation. So growing up, we had this house across the street. It was just a basic ranch house. This woman cordoned off like her garage, where you open the garage door and it was like a wall. She made that into like an apartment, put a couple other apartments in the basement. So all these people would come in and out all night and all day that we didn't know. Like she would change tenants and people. And one night, it's like 10 o'clock on a winter night, somebody knocks on our front door. And now she was renting to this really heavy-set woman whose car was full of fast food bags and wrappers, and she was just really disgusting, this woman. We hear her knock on the door. My dad opens the door, and it's this woman. And she says, "Will you jump me?" So my dad looks at her like...
That's mighty direct.
My dad looks at her, and my mom's like, "If you don't get out of here, I'm going to jump you." She wanted my dad to go out and jump her car because
Right.
the battery wouldn't start in the winter, like this random tenant. But this is like the crazy people we had to deal with coming in and out of this household. Have you ever dealt with anything like that?
Kind of more comical. When I was growing up at my parents' house, this family moved in, and they had a son that was probably about 4 years younger than me. I think when I graduated high school, this kid was in 9th grade, and we'd give him a ride, or I would give him a ride to school every now and then. But when they moved in, the kid was probably 4th grade, and he moved in. And he came across the street. He was a latchkey kid. He'd come home every day, let himself in.
I was one of those.
Yeah. And so he comes over one day, and he has a pack of Kool-Aid and a pitcher, like a Rubbermaid gallon pitcher. And he asked my mom, he says, will you make some Kool-Aid for me? And
he didn't have water?
Well, that's what my mom said. She said, she called him by his name and said, all you got to do is put the water in and put the powder in and stir it up. Fill up the pitcher, put the powder in, stir it up. And he was like, no, it's not that easy. You do it. So she had to sit there and make the Kool-Aid for him. About 2 weeks later, he lost his key. He comes over to my parents' house. He asked my mom, he says, can I see your house key? And she said, why? And she said, well, I locked myself out. And she said, well, you can stay here. My key's not going to get you in to your house. Well, let me see it.
Oh, no.
And so she shows him the key, and he looks at this key that's a normal hexagonal house key, and he goes, yeah, mine looks just like that. Let me see that for a second. And she's like, no, you don't get it. It's different from yours.
The cut is different.
Yeah, and so, just, neighborhood kids not,
He wasn't the sharpest tool.
Wasn't the brightest. I don't know whatever happened to him. So his family still lives across the street from my parents.
They do.
And every now and then I ask my mom and dad, like, hey, whatever happened to that kid? And they're like, we don't know. He doesn't.
Did he ever find his key? That's the question. That's what the listeners want to know.
Did he ever learn how to make Kool-Aid? Is the better one.
So what would you do if one of your neighbors was the dentist you've always gone to for years, and you had a relationship with this dentist, but he had a son that liked to play the drums all hours of the day and night with the windows open with an amplifier, and you could hear it clear as day in your living room? Would you go over there and ask nicely that they maybe shut the window, or would you kind of avoid it because this guy's your dentist?
Did the dentist know that you guys, the patients, lived right down the way?
Well, he obviously... that, and I'm sure he knows other neighbors in the area.
I think if you...
Would you jeopardize the relationship with your dentist?
No, I'd go down there, or I'd tell him why he's got my mouth cranked open, tell Johnny to shut it up.
Well, I know somebody who went over and nicely said, could you please have your son shut the window? And they said no, and it didn't escalate, but it was just a very awkward situation.
The next time you were in the dentist?
No, they had to go cancel. They had to have... switch dentists because they didn't want the awkwardness of going to the dentist after they wouldn't do anything about their son's
drumming. And then you
drumming.
don't know if this guy's crazy. He's
going to fuck your teeth up.
Novocaine you in the wrong spot.
Right. So, and this person didn't even go get their records. They just had another dentist's office, like get the records. They didn't even go in and say, I need my, because it was too awkward.
Yeah.
What would you have done in that situation?
I don't know. I can see it going down like that. I've been in situations where you have a neighbor who you're friends with both of them, and then all of a sudden they go through a really nasty divorce.
Right.
And you still, whether it's around town or for business purposes, still see both sides or one side of the couple or the side of the couple that was at fault, and that makes it, kind of awkward. Do you change where you do business?
Right, exactly, yeah. Now, what if now I know we're going to get into HOAs, homeowners associations, in a little bit when we talk about our lovely neighborhood. And they do a great job, I think, to a degree. A lot of people, I like some things about an HOA where, people aren't going to paint their house pink. But I know a situation where, this wouldn't happen in an HOA. Although there are some houses that are pretty ramshackle around here that they don't do much about, but we'll get into that later. But what would you do if you had a neighbor who had his not just tomatoes, a huge garden. I'm talking about a massive garden in his front yard because he wouldn't put it in his backyard because he had dogs. And he staked the tomato plants with sticks. It looked like a really...
He's got scarecrows the whole 9 yards.
Like a real ramshackle garden in his front yard that you had to look at every time you stepped outside your house. Would you be pissed off about something like that?
Yeah. It'd be better if he just had like a car on block.
What if he had a harvest every fall and then invited all the neighbors to share in his bounty? Would that make it easier for you? Like he threw you a couple of zucchini?
Yeah, it's getting a little bit nicer. Mix some sauces.
Because I know someone who actually does that, has a garden in his front yard where nobody's complained about it, but it looks terrible because everybody else's lawn is manicured, everything's nice, and then you pass his house and it's just a shit show.
Yeah, it's a farmer's market.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it looks like he compost everything just thrown out there.
This guy couldn't cordon off a section of his backyard.
That's what he should be doing, but he doesn't. He just decided to do it in the front yard where everybody can see, and I don't know. As a neighbor, I wouldn't want to look at that.
This guy's local.
No, he's not. He's from New York.
I was going to say, I need the address.
We're going to go pick some cucumbers later. So you would say something to the guy. Would you? What if there was no HOA? Who do you report?
If there's no HOA, there's nothing you can
go to the town.
You could probably go to the town. I know our city has a what do they call it? A marshal who's like, if your grass gets 9 feet tall, they'll leave you a summons, but. Yeah,
we're supposed to have that here, but we don't.
Well, yeah, true.
Well, that'll segue. Do you have any other stories before we start talking about our wonderful, enchanted neighborhood?
No.
Well, here's how I look at our neighborhood, folks, and I have a nice theme to talk about it. If I can cue this up the right way. Now, we all remember Melrose Place. Now, we are all individual houses here. We're not like townhouses where everybody's banging each other. We don't have Heather Locklear. There's no Billy, Allison, any of those people. But there is a lot of drama here.
There's drama.
And I attribute that. Now, 225 houses, we wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for social media. I probably wouldn't know you.
Probably not.
So, growing up, we'll get rid of the Melrose here. We'll fade it out.
It's just getting to the hook.
Oh, yeah, it's just getting to the hook. I wish there were words, but come on, Monday nights after 90210?
Oh, yeah, it was on.
It was on. Guess we'd even pregame for the Monday Night Footballs, watching these two shows, then watch Monday Night Football at the Ground Round. Remember the Ground Round restaurant? Come on, did you watch Melrose?
I did. It was a couple of years. I was maybe a little bit too young for it in its prime. For me, it was one of those things where you watch it and hope mom doesn't walk in.
All the killings and the who's sleeping with who.
Yeah.
And it's not quite like that in our neighborhood, but there is a lot of drama.
There's drama. There's people that think they're Heather Locklear.
Yes, I'll give you that. So let's segue into our neighborhood. We're not going to name the subdivision, but it is a subdivision. About 224, I think, is the number. I'm going to stick with that number, homes. Now, it covers a lot of ground. There's a lot of homes. Now, again, we wouldn't all know each other, but I pretty much know everybody by name for being on that Facebook page for 8 years. Yeah. You know all the cast of characters.
When you see the first name on the Facebook group, this person's here to complain, and then there's other people, this person's here to make fun of other people.
Exactly. And now, I have to say something. If you moderate a group, folks, if you start a group on Facebook and you're the moderator, you're supposed to squash this shit. We have a moderator. I'm not going to, again, not mention any names, but as a moderator, you're not supposed to be a yenta and stir the pot. You're supposed to say, okay, folks, that's enough. We have a moderator here, and I'm not ashamed to say it. It's true, who kind of stirs the shit pot and lets it carry on. And then after it goes down to an all-out, knockdown, drag-down fight, he'll just delete the whole thing. After everybody's already hating each other, ready to go to each other's house and beat the shit out of each other. Like, it's got to stop after the first rude comment or two. And this is what our Facebook page has turned into, folks. I'm here 8 years now. The Facebook page used to be a place to go where you needed a referral for I need my blade on my lawnmower sharpened. I need a referral or something that was going on at an event or a clubhouse, or it's turned into like a bitch session now on there where every little trivial little thing is brought, and this isn't exclusive to our neighborhood, folks, because I know people in other neighborhoods that aren't even in subdivisions. It's just a general town page, and it's the same shit. Yeah, people just go on there to complain.
Subdivision we just moved from about 7 months ago. Same thing.
It was as bad as this?
Thing. Yeah, and we were there 10 years.
Oh my God. So what do you think about the whole this whole subdivision Facebook page? Do you think it's being utilized correctly?
So in the grand scheme of things, of the purpose of probably why it was created, no. And you do still see the posts of, hey, I need my fence redone. Has anybody had a contractor out here who gave a fair quote? But for the purposes that I enjoy the Facebook group, I think it's perfect because I am that guy who I'll get in there and I'll stoke the fire a little bit in a subtle way.
Well, the reason I think we came up with this topic a couple of weeks ago, an incident happened on the Facebook page, and I had messaged Corey the next day saying, "What do you think of all this?" And I'll give you an overview. Correct me if I have any of the facts wrong. A few weeks ago, someone now this is where we get passive aggressive, folks. Let me tell you something. In New York, let me give you the story first. There was a specific car model, a black Nissan Altima, that's been coming through the neighborhood, allegedly running stop signs and going very fast. And we have a lot of kids in the neighborhood, so you kind of have to watch here. You know, there are kids. You don't want to have any accidents or any problems. You don't want to piss your neighbors off, so you have to be considerate. But apparently this person was driving through the neighborhood on several occasions at a high rate of speed, ignoring stop signs, blowing horns at people backing out of their driveway. Allegedly, this is what people say, and more than one source. So one day, after this was reported, I guess everybody must have been on high alert for a black Nissan Altima. A resident pulled in her driveway who happened to own a black Nissan Altima. Now, we don't know if this woman was the culprit. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. I don't know. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody. But she pulled in her garage after a day's work. Her garage door was open. A couple with a dog and a kid, I don't know. It wasn't.
That's my understanding of it.
Were passing the house on a walk and saw the Nissan Altima, the black Nissan Altima, and kind of were in her driveway looking to see if it was the make or model. I don't know if they had a tag number and they were trying to match it up. I have no idea. So the woman came out and basically, "What are you doing in my driveway?" And the police were called, and she falsely accused somebody. The person who had made the initial complaint on Facebook about the Nissan Altima accused him of being the guy in her driveway when he says it wasn't him. He wasn't home that night or whatever. So this escalated into 70 comments back and forth, everybody fighting. Now, here's my first question. Let's start from the beginning. If you kept seeing the same car coming up your block at a high rate of speed blowing stop signs, I'm not going to Facebook. If it's bothering me that much, my ass is going to go out in the street, stop the car, step in front of it, roll down the window and say, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Spike strips.
Anything. You don't come home. To me, it's a little bitchy to come home and go on Facebook and start just confront the problem. I told the story. A guy kept reaching up my grandfather's block when I was a kid, a teenager in a Trans Am. My grandfather hid in the bushes one day with his leaf blower, his gas-powered leaf blower, hopped out in the middle of the street. The kid thought it was a gun, slammed on his brakes. My grandfather pointed the leaf blower in the car and just started blowing the kid's hair and said, "Don't come up and down the street anymore. You got animals and kids and elderly people living here." And the kid didn't do it anymore. Here, to me, and it's not just here, again, these Facebook pages, they're kind of passive-aggressive.
They provide it's false posturing.
Right.
Like, if that method of the Facebook group wasn't there, like, nobody would have done shit.
Exactly.
Right?
So,
but,
keyboard warrior.
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, like, something needed to be said. And if you're not going to jump out in front of the car like you, like, yes, put people on high alert. If your kids are in the driveway or street riding a bike, somebody's blowing through here at 65 miles an hour. But at that whole post, again, she was accusing certain people of coming into her driveway.
Everybody was wrong.
Those people weren't home. It was, oh God.
I mean, I think it started off, the post was wrong to begin with, addressed the issue. But then it got to be where she was accusing the wrong person, and then it just escalated from there. And again, as a moderator, cut the thread, say, "That's it, folks, we're not doing this." But it went on, and now you said you were monitoring this whole thing. It was happening, and you were going to interject something funny.
So here's what I was going to interject, right? So prior to it starting up that night of, "Get out of my driveway, don't look in my garage," or blah, 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 who are you? Prior to that, someone else had posted that the local high school baseball team was selling smoked Boston butts as a fundraiser. And so...
tell our listeners from other parts of the country what a smoked Boston butt is. Is it like a pork? Like a smoked pork brisket
it's
type
a pork
thing?
Brisket, big giant,
because I didn't even know what it was.
Well, yeah. Smoked Boston butts means something else in New York.
Exactly. That's when the Yankees beat the Red Sox. That's a smoked Boston butt.
Yeah, true. So anyway, so somebody had posted the local fundraiser for the baseball team, and then this shit starts with, "Don't come in my driveway. Who do you think you are?" And I got a black Altima, but it's not that one. And,
right.
And then So this thing gets 40, 50 posts down that night. I'm just sitting there, like, eating popcorn on my couch, like, oh, shit, here we go. And so I was going to post at the very bottom of it, after it calmed down, I was going to post, is this where I go to order the Boston Butts? Just to mess with people.
No, I wouldn't.
My wife's the more level-head one. She's like, you're going to stoke the fire again? I'm like, all right.
No, but that's what you got. Like, do you know how many times I start typing something and I just
stop?
Well, my wife will say, don't say anything. And I just delete it. Like,
that's my wife, too.
Like yesterday I had to, because maybe you can give an overview. We have a clubhouse, folks, that you rent for private events and parties. You pay a fee, and you get the clubhouse for the evening or the day, whenever you're having a party. And there was an incident there the other night, if you want to tell them what it was.
So someone had booked the clubhouse for a family or event. I think actually that event is to occur. It was to occur on a Saturday.
Right.
But the night before the event, the person who booked it arrived to set up decorations. When they arrived, they saw a group of kids. Now, they did not give a description of age. Nobody in the neighborhood knows, are these second graders or are these 18-year-olds? They saw a group of kids scurry out another exit of the clubhouse.
Right.
And as the person went in to kind of see what was going on, because nobody is passcode. Nobody's supposed to be in there unless you have paid the fee.
Exactly.
They went in, and there were candles, matches, tongs.
It was like a straw.
Bowls, straws, hollowed out pens.
Science project.
Just legit Mr. Wizard type stuff, right? Like, all that was in the kitchenette area. So
the science fair is coming up, Corey, next week.
Yeah, exactly. The person who is responsible, the people responsible for assigning and booking the clubhouse, they let everybody know, hey, this happened. We don't know if these were neighborhood kids or outside kids. But this happened, just so everybody knows. We're going to look into how we make it more secure.
Right.
Here comes the shit.
Yeah, that's all you have to do, folks. And it's like, I had to step in and say something on there yesterday because, first of all, people right away assume it couldn't be their kid. It had to be from some. It had to be from some.
This has to be from the other side of the tracks,
right? Yeah. Which, come on, suburban kids do shady shit, folks. I hate to break it to everybody.
Suburban kids
are the worst.
Suburban kids have the means to do shady shit,
right? So then it went on. Now I know why the Patriot Act passed so quickly under George Bush. Again, we don't get political on the show, but this minute something bad happens, people are willing to give up every freedom they have to feel safe. So this one woman, and I think she had good intention, she said, we need to put cameras in there, meaning the clubhouse. Now, she didn't say where, if it was on the outside, so I chimed in and said, do you really want to have a party in there and be on closed-circuit TV where Joey's 5th birthday brought to you by ADT? Like where somebody's sitting there watching you live, either live streaming your birthday party or whatever, your mom's party, whatever, or later on just going back and saying, oh, let's see what kind of party they had.
Yeah.
Like, do you really want this invasion of privacy?
So I'm on the other side of that, right? I think, and this is one of those posts where you saw last night, I chimed in.
Right, you did.
Where, it was brought up. There have been other incidents in the tennis court area, pool area.
Right.
As of late, where, if we had cameras on the exterior.
Oh, absolutely.
Pointing towards the walkway so you see who's approaching. I agree with you. Not on the inside.
Not on the inside.
You're whatever.
You're having a private party.
Bachelor party, baby shower, who cares? You don't want people pulling that footage.
On the outside, I'm fine. I have them on the outside of my house, cameras. I'm fine with that.
But the argument, right, was, whoa, those cameras are really expensive.
No, they're not.
Number one, they're not, okay?
Costco, $150.
Number one, they're not, and there's not a price, as I posted last night, there's not a price that is too expensive for me to keep people from freebasing cocaine and meth within 500 yards of my house.
No, I totally agree. No, I'm with you on that. I just don't want it inside. Like, if I have a party, not that I'm going to be nude running around the clubhouse, but I don't want people seeing, I had a book release party there a few months ago. And again, it wasn't anything special, but it was our private party, and what we say, and some of these have audio. I don't want them hearing if I yell, "The HOA sucks, motherfucker." I don't want them hearing that.
But the best part of it was, and you I could get where you see a candle, you see some matches, you see a hollowed out highlighter.
Yeah,
one would think, oh, kids are in here experimenting what happens with fire. And then there's a whole nother sector of the neighborhood that goes, nope, they're not.
No,
they're
there's something's not right.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the first, the Ultima and the clubhouse thing. We had an incident, and Corey wasn't in the neighborhood yet. This went back, I don't know, I guess a couple of years ago, where, first of all, I own dogs, folks. Up until this year, I had 4 dogs. One of my dogs passed away this year. We have dogs. Now, we spent a lot of money on a fence when we moved in here. I have padlocked the gate, so nobody can just open it and come in, and if the dog's outside, the dog's not running anywhere. In all the years I've owned dogs, I have never let my dog get out of the yard. Period. He's never run away. None of them. I have 3 now. I had 4. None of them ever got out. If I saw that they were maybe trying to dig under, it got remedied. Every place I ever lived where I've had dogs, I've been a responsible dog owner. We have in this neighborhood people who have dogs. The same dogs get out every week. I had the gardener over and he got out. If you know the fucking gardener's coming over, why is the dog in the backyard? You put him in the house. Like if I know the guy's coming to inspect my termite traps, the dog gets closed. They don't go out until after he comes, then they can go out because I don't want him letting them out. But the dogs get out, and dogs are going to shit where they're going to shit. And there are people that walk their dogs and let them shit on people's property, and it sucks because it gives all dog owners a bad name. Now, a few years back, we had this woman who dogs were shitting on her property. And I'd be pissed too, but she kind of took it to an extreme, went on that Facebook page and just went fucking batshit, like crazy. And even got to a point where she said she was going to do bodily harm to some of the dogs in the neighborhood if she saw them shitting on her property. So somebody got wind of this and went and called her employer. I don't know if it was an insurance agency or real estate. I don't know what it was. And said, I don't know if they gave a screenshot. I don't know what they did, but said, this woman's threatening dogs. Well, they, I guess, talked to her at work, and then she came home and went fucking crazy on the Facebook page saying that somebody, which was an asshole move. You don't call, again,
bitch
go
move.
to the woman's house. If you're an animal lover, you go to the woman's house and say, listen, I don't like what you said. If you have balls, you knock on the door and say, listen, I don't like what you said about killing dogs or whatever, harming dogs. It wasn't right. You don't call the woman's insurance company or employee, whatever. But this is what we're dealing with, folks, in the age of neighborhood Facebook and social media pages. People have a lot of free time on their hands to sit and watch out the window and stir up all this bullshit.
Well, and you can't get away from it too with the mobile apps and everything. I'll be in another state,
and you'll know what's going on.
And I'll know exactly what's going on in our neighborhood. Yeah,
it's good and it's bad,
it's
right?
It's good and it's bad, and it's it brings comedy, which is the best thing. I mean, because it's like, do people really give that much of a crap? We had at the last neighborhood we were in on the Facebook group. Now there were aggressive dogs getting out.
Sure.
And it was the same 2 dogs all the time. And people went multiple times to the owner's house and said, hey, look, can we help you fix the holes in the fence?
Sure.
and stuff like that. And then it got down the line to the local county animal control was on constant patrol in the yard, or excuse me, in the subdivision, driving by, and then it got to the point where people are like, well, you let that dog come up in here and it's going to get a 9mm to its head, and it's like, good God. Like,
it escalates.
Yeah. And then in the next post, they're like, so what are the plans for the Halloween parade?
Yeah, exactly. So what I said before about, once you say something to someone, you run the risk of being that guy, and then you have to live around these people. So what I said before is you have to do passive-aggressive shit where they may know it's you or they may not. So a few years back, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning when I was working down at the courts. I would get to the courts around 6 o'clock. Now, the day after 4th of July, if 4th of July lands on a Tuesday, guess what? Wednesday's not a holiday for most people. Your ass has to be up at 4:30 in the morning and go to work. I understand the laws here in Georgia with fireworks. But these fireworks went on and on and on and on. So I said, I got to fucking get up in a few hours. So this is what I did. Now, you hear the fireworks in the background. This is midnight now, folks. So I found this clip on the internet, and I took my DJ speakers. Now, I have more power than SunTrust Stadium. I have a ton of DJ speakers. So this is what I put out the window.
You need to shut the fuck up.
So they kept going on.
You need to shut the fuck up.
Now, this is echoing in the neighborhood throughout the night, and then all of a sudden,
shut the fuck up.
The fireworks stop. And people are listening. Where's that coming from? Who's yelling to shut the fuck up? So the people stop and they're walking up the neighborhood. They're looking to see who's telling them to shut the fuck up. So, so they don't know where it's coming from. So I'm like, it stopped and then it started up again. So the next morning, let me.
That was here in this neighborhood?
Yes, it was a few years ago.
Awesome.
So I'm doing this. That's Penn from Penn and Teller, and you need to shut the fuck up. And I had 4 giant DJ speakers out the window because I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go to work. I lost my mind, and I'm playing. And nobody knew where. Now they'll know, but nobody knew where it was coming from. And it continued on and on. They stopped, looked around, went back. So my mother always taught me, and I come from a spiteful Italian family. When someone fucks you at night, like as far as noise, my mother was always up early. My mother, we come from a blue collar family. Everybody was up early, going to work, going to school. My mother said the best time to get even with these fuckers is early in the morning.
5 a.m., yeah.
Because keeping somebody up it can do, it'll annoy, but when you wake somebody up at 4 o'clock in the morning from a dead sleep, that's worse than keeping them up at night. So the next morning, I took note that night, who's doing these fireworks to houses down here, down there. Next morning, went with my headlights off, went to each individual house. Just like that, folks, until their lights came on. Then when their lights came on, I drove off and I went to the next house. Then I just went to Dunkin' Donuts and went to work.
Yeah.
And that's how I get even. So they don't know who it is. They know somebody was pissed off the night before. And that's how you get. You don't go out and confront. Because I learned from that crazy guy in New York. You don't go out and confront because it'll escalate. You just do passive-aggressive shit where they might know it's you, but they're not sure.
Yeah.
You don't get caught doing it. And you pay back that way.
So that just, and I'm going to have to eat crow here. That just reminded me of a story. First job out of college, I was living up north, and it was a short stint as planned before they sent me off to another part of the country. And the apartment right next door to mine was a couple about my age, boyfriend, girlfriend, and me and the girl, we'd talk in the parking lot if we got home at the same time. Boyfriend did not like that whatsoever. And he was,
especially with a ladies' man like yourself.
I'm an Adonis. Right? I mean, he saw me pull in and he was like,
intimidation.
I'm going to lose her. Yeah. So, she and I would talk every now and then, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he would do certain things like that, blow the horn, yell stuff.
But you knew it was him.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't good at...
Oh, yeah, he wasn't... like, face to face. Like, don't you ever talk to her again. I'm like, look, dude, I'm not doing anything. I said hello, right?
Right.
If you've got concerns, you need to sort that out on your own. So it got to where I knew I had 3 nights left in this apartment, and I knew, like, I'm never going to see these people again for the rest of my life. So what I did, this guy, he delivered pizzas. So I saw him leave for work, and when I saw him come back, once or twice in the night as he's making his pizza runs. And I knew from the radio that she was home. I could hear the radio or stereo, whatever. So I knew she was home. So I called the pizzeria and said, do you have a delivery guy that's about 6'2", dark hair, drives a green sedan?
Oh, no.
And they're like, yeah, we do. And I was like, all right, I need to talk to the manager. And I'm like, this guy just came to deliver a pizza to my neighbor. He backed out. He hit another neighbor's car. He got out. He checked it. He left. And I was just messing with this guy. Right. So where I said the other person, it was a bitch move to call the other person's employer,
right.
I did a bitch move.
We got a bitch here.
I'll own it. Whatever.
No, sometimes you have to do this stuff. Right?
But then I made nice when I had some expired case of beer in my refrigerator that I never drank. I never drank it. I think I won it free at like a tailgate or something. Never drank it. I knew it was.
You found a case of Low and Brow.
Yeah, and so when I left my last day, I'm not going to take this across country with me. I went and I left it on his doorstep, and I said, "Here's a case of beer for you from your neighbor who's leaving," and it probably tasted like shit.
Right. So remember I said before, like, we don't have control over who moves in or out of our neighborhood?
Yeah.
We kind of do. And I'll tell you why real quick. We have a house for sale and that borders the back of our house. And the people that live there, they're gone now, but they were nice people. We didn't talk to them much. We would see them out, wave. And their house has been on the market. Usually houses go pretty quickly in this neighborhood. Their house has been on the market now for 2 or 3 weeks, and we've seen people come in and out to look at it. And it was priced a little high. They dropped the price last night, like $15,000. So we're going to see more traffic there now. So I said to my wife, if I don't like the looks of people, I should just like walk out on the deck nude.
Yeah.
Where they like, holy shit, this is crazy.
That's what old man Charlie does.
Yeah, like just make like crazy, like crazy sounds outside. Like if they have like too many kids and it's going to be like, I don't want the fucking Brady Bunch living behind me. Just go out there and act like an idiot, and they'll be like, I mean, not that I would really do it. I'm just being a wise ass. But, like, there are ways where you can give people a second thought about moving into your neighborhood. What are your pet peeves about neighbors? Like, what bothers you, like, about neighbors? Like, mine is lawn mow, like, any yard work done at, like, before 10 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday morning. That pisses me off.
Yeah, it's less than neighborly. But it doesn't really piss me off.
I mean, I wouldn't go out and say anything unless it was like 5 in the morning. But doesn't it just grind your gears?
There's some stuff, the late nights.
Parties?
Yeah, but parties where it's like, come on, guys, it's blatant. And I think it's pretty good around here. Like you were mentioning with the fireworks and stuff like that. I think one of your other episodes said this. You know, if you're doing fireworks on 4th of July or New Year's and it's 12:30, 12:45, okay, 3 o'clock in the morning.
You're not celebrating the New Year anymore. You're being an asshole.
Now you're just trying to make sure you get your return on investment. We had a neighbor at another house where, and I don't know if he just didn't have the money to fix it, he didn't realize it was that bad or whatever, but this guy left for work every day at 5 o'clock, and he had the shittiest timing belt of all time.
It's a squeak.
Oh, God. And when he would fire that car up every morning...
just get a new belt or oil it.
5 a.m. Like, you knew it was coming.
I don't like, and I know this is very petty, but... And it's not just here. I've had neighbors where they have a party, or they have just a few people over, and there's plenty of parking right in front of their own house. But they park in front of all the guests park in front of my house and then trample across the lawn. Now I'm not running. I don't have a green thumb. I don't have the botanical gardens in my front yard. It's not. But if you have company, I'll tell somebody in an Evite, park in the driveway or park in front of our house.
Do the same thing.
These people, nobody's in front of their house ever, but they park in front of my house all the time, and they park on the opposite side of the street, facing the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'll park on my side, but facing the side that should be coming the other way. Like that, and it just something about it.
Off.
Something about it just it makes me mad.
And I'm like you. I try to control that.
You put it in your invite, or mention it when you talk to them. If you're coming over tonight, make sure you park here.
At our last house, we actually had 2 driveways.
Right.
And so there was ample parking. We could have had 20 cars there, and it would have been fine. And we would have a party. And, New Year's or my wife's birthday or something like that, invite 30 people, so 30 people, you're assuming, let's call it 22 cars going to be coming over.
Right.
And nobody would park in the driveway. The driveways would have my car and my wife's car be empty the rest of the way, and everybody on the street. And I'm like, what are you guys doing?
I guess people don't want to get blocked in if they want to leave early.
Yeah, but
if they want to do the Irish exit.
Well,
leave without
not at my party.
So, really, this doesn't bother you on a Saturday morning?
No, but that sound reminds me of something. I don't know if you've heard this.
Come on. 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, you're not ready to kill?
No, 8 o'clock on a Saturday, I've been up.
So have we, but I don't want to hear that. Like, Saturday mornings, aren't they sacred Saturday mornings?
Yeah,
you worked all week. You want to have your coffee. You want to just do what you... And to hear it, I want to go out there and kill.
So the start of that sound reminded me, there's a kid in the neighborhood... I don't know what the laws are for this. It's like a not a dune buggy or a dirt bike, but it's something like that. And he buzzes around at like 10:15 at night. Do you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's done it while I'm taping this podcast a couple of times.
He's small too.
Yeah.
I don't know how he's getting away with it. I've seen him.
Yeah.
And he's out there like a little evil Knievel.
So here's my gauge, like, as far as you should always be, like, unless your neighbor's a total asshole, you should be cordial, say hello, say goodbye. But as far as getting close to your neighbors, I think people are under the impression that you have to be friends with your neighbors simply because you live next door or across the street. I gauge it like this. Would I be friends with these people if they didn't live next door or across the street from me? Do we have the same interests? Do we have the same things in common? And the answer is more times than not, no. So, like, you don't have to be friends. People think you have to be friends friends with your neighbors. You don't. And I think being too close with your neighbors can have you run into problems. Because if there is, like you said, there's a falling out over something, then you've got to be
Nobody's putting their house for sale over it unless it's really bad.
Right. Then you've got to deal with these people. And in that neighborhood where I had the tough guy across the street giving us the problems, and we were close with that whole group of 12. But when push came to shove and this guy was harassing me and I had to have the police in my house, everybody was scared of this guy and nobody took my back. If all 12 of us would have taken each other's back and went to the police and really made it like this guy's the problem, we probably could have had a resolution in that neighborhood. Now, we left and it's still going on. So
you keep in touch with them? They know.
I do keep in touch with a couple of them.
He's still an issue.
He's still there. And to me, like, neighbors are neighbors. They're friends until you, like, they don't always have you back. Like in this situation, it was blatant that this guy was a troublemaker. He gave them problems before we moved there. He's had problems with everybody. And if I was friends with somebody, I would have their back. But some of these neighbors were afraid of this guy and they didn't want to get involved. They were our friends, but until we needed them. Yeah. And that kind of bothers me about neighbors. To me, they're fake friends in a lot of cases.
I agree with you. And, you know, the true test is, and you know, obviously if you live next door to somebody for 20 years, you get to know them and stuff. But I have a friend who, his neighbor, they lived next door to each other for about 25 years, and his neighbor came over and said, I need you and your wife to look after my wife for the next 3 years because I'm going to prison.
Oh, wow.
And this guy never created a problem, nothing. He was just like, I can't tell you why, I can't tell you what, but I'm going to be gone. Will you make sure she's okay? Huh. And they did. They would have her over for dinner and stuff like that. They never asked what this guy did.
See, that's a friend.
That's true friendship.
That's friendship.
If I get hauled out of here in cuffs tomorrow,
you're going to be all over the Facebook page.
Somebody's going to post that they need me to sell my house.
Well, in this neighborhood, like you and I, we're in the same neighborhood, but you don't even live within. I can't even see your house from here.
Right.
So it's like that's okay to be friends because we're not next door. And if you think suddenly Charlie's an asshole, we don't have to live next door to each other. But like, and we're friendly with everybody on this block. I go back when I'm mowing the lawn. I'll stop and say hi, small talk. But I'm 8 years. We've never had anybody over for dinner. Mm-hmm. A couple of the neighbors, when they've had issues in the family, like with a sick child, we've run dinner over to them and try to help out in that sense. But we learned from New York, like we're not going to have these big close friendships with people in the neighborhood just because we got burned. We felt like we got burned, and we just want to keep it cordial with everybody, but we don't want to. I don't know. It's just we got very turned off from that experience.
And then there's like, you know, what are the things that you're supposed to say because you know, like you see somebody and it's like, oh, you know, hey, we should have you and your wife over for dinner sometime.
We've said that back and forth for 8 years with a couple of people.
But then it never happens.
It's
right?
never going to happen.
So the best is there's since we've lived here, there's been some people they're like, oh gosh, we should have you guys over for dinner sometime, and then you know, we're not expecting it. You know, it's,
right.
You know, if it happens, it happens. But then you hear of or see like they have a dinner party with like 30 people there, but you're not.
Well, they meant one-on-one, Corey. They wanted you, your presence, and your presence only. So, folks, that's going about. You have anything else to add before we wrap things up?
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thank you so much for coming back, Corey. Folks, if you don't know by now, well, there are some new listeners, so I'm going to run down where we are available. We're available on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, CastBox, and all of our shows are also streamed on YouTube. Or if you have an Amazon Echo, just say, Alexa, play the podcast A Bunch of Malarkey, and she will play the most recent episode. And if you want to skip, just say, Alexa, skip this episode, and she'll go back to the older episodes. Don't forget, subscribe. Give us a review. Our Facebook page is where our poll is for the Mutant of the Week. Don't forget to vote this week. Who do we have again, Corey? We have
the first one is the creepy crawly counselor, the bedbug guy.
And we have the closeted creep, the guy found in that woman, in that college girl's closet. So poll will be out on Tuesday morning. It'll run through Saturday, so you'll have almost a full week to vote. Corey, thanks once again for coming in.
Thank you.
We had a good time, and we'll definitely have you back once again.
All right.
We'll make you a crowd favorite.
There you go. There you go.
All right, folks. So as I always say, and even in your own neighborhood, because you do know the people in your neighborhood, and that would be beware. It's a shit show out there. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been A Bunch of Malarkey. Take care, everybody.